Head canon is not fact. That's a great comment somebody just left on that video from yesterday. Head canon is not fact. Well, you'll have some people who claim otherwise, but that's such a true thing. My favorite is when you get people who try to argue that their head canon is more legitimate than the actual canon of a project. I gotta jot this down. Head canon. So this is on that IP video we did yesterday. N8J722 says, preach. Adaptations are impossible to make 100% one-to-one. Headcanon is not fact. Also, what's funny is when you give multiple people easy modding tools to a game like Skyrim, they'll all come up with different reasons and versions for every single person of what their ideal Skyrim is, or what should or shouldn't be included in terms of mods. It's very true. But headcanon, man, I've had that discussion so many times about Middle-earth and Star Wars, because in both cases, Star Trek even to a lesser degree, but in all three of those examples, the original authors are gone, are dead and gone. Well, I guess George Lucas is still around, but he's dead and gone in the sense that he sold the IP. But the point of this is that the most vocal of the people who claim that headcanon is more official than official canon is because they'll say things like, well, Gene Roddenberry wouldn't have wanted this. Tolkien wouldn't have wanted this. Tolkien would be rolling in his grave. J.R.R. Tolkien would have said this. J.R.R. Tolkien would have thought this, etc., etc., etc. But you'll even see it with authors like, a good example of this is J.K. Rowling, because she has come under fire in recent years because of her stance on transgenderism. And you have a lot of people who loved her books who can't stand her politics, and they can't separate art from the artist. And so they will then say things like, well, I don't approve of her politics, therefore I don't approve of her canon for the books. So I'm going to make up my own canon, and I'm going to replace the official canon with my head canon for what Harry Potter actually is. And that's not the way it works. You'll also see this with Star Wars. People will say things like, Disney Star Wars doesn't count. Only the George Lucas Star Wars counts. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys also ranted about how George Lucas Star Wars was bad when George Lucas was in charge of it, because you'll throw Jar Jar Binks out, and you'll say that Jar Jar Binks is like, no, I can't accept Jar Jar Binks. No, I don't accept midichlorians. George, you ruined the Force when you added midichlorians. So I think the big issue here is, like, is it headcanon is not fact, but it goes beyond that in the sense that many people try to claim that their headcanon is more official than actual canon just because they disagree with what the modern version of those franchises is, whether or not the original authors are still around. Because in many cases, as with like Star Trek, Star Wars, or Middle-earth, those IPs are now governed by other people than the original creators, who may or may not still be around. You know, with Star Wars, George Lucas is still around, but he hasn't been involved with it for a decade. Christopher Tolkien is gone. He was managing it for his father, and now it's managed by basically the grandchildren, who had nothing to do with any of the editing or writing, or they're just managing this massive library of works that Tolkien and his son worked on. And in the case of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry has been gone for decades, but yet you have a very passionate group of people who have continued to work on Star Trek over the years. But you'll have all these people who say things like, well, the J.J. Abrams movies aren't really Star Trek. I don't include those in the canon. And it's like, you don't get to make that decision. That's not your decision to make. Just because you didn't like the J.J. Abrams movies doesn't mean they aren't official Star Trek properties. They are very much 100% official Star Trek canon. That's the Kelvin timeline. You don't have to like the Kelvin timeline. You're free to not enjoy that as much as other pieces. Absolutely, but your head canon of that not being an official part of the Star Trek universe doesn't trump the fact that it's actually part of the Star Trek universe. Magically wanting to throw the Star Wars Christmas special out of the picture and say, oh, it's the most horrific thing ever made. I don't accept that. I don't accept Jar Jar Binks. I don't accept the Disney Star Wars. That's not how that works. Like, headcanon is not, especially when it comes to licensing and IP and copyright. And this is where I will always, and this is the easiest way to ruin a troll's day, is when they try to say something like, well, I don't accept that. Well, it doesn't matter if you don't accept it, honey. Copyright law, trademark law, and IP law specifically show that that is, in fact, official canon and official whatever. And then they'll say things like, well, the franchise wouldn't exist without fans like me. It doesn't need you, honey. You're not actually a fan if you're going to take a stand and say something like, well, that's not officially part of the canon, that you were never a fan in the first place. We could dislike different, like we were talking about the Ewok movies earlier. Those are not good movies, but they are fun in terms of being a kid film. And you can't just throw them out because you don't like them. They're still officially part of the Star Wars story, as is the Christmas special, even though it was universally ridiculed. Like, you might not like the Disney era Star Wars, but it's still officially part of the official canon of Star Wars, just as much as the High Republic era stuff is. Deep Space Nine, The Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks. These are all official Star Trek canon, even though Roddenberry has been gone for decades. It doesn't have anything to do with modern Star Trek. It's still official Star Trek content. So headcanon doesn't magically just make all this stuff disappear. So yeah, headcanon is not fact. Great statement. And I love expounding upon that more because so many people want to think their headcanon is somehow factual. And it's like, no, your headcanon has no basis in fact. Matter of fact, it doesn't even have any basis in actual copyright or intellectual property law. When it comes to how these franchises are managed, which is why fan fiction, you can write all the fan fiction you want, but one of the reasons that companies will go after fan fiction so many times is because it's not official. And when you have a company who is actively governing the franchise with official content, this is why I don't permit people to talk about emulators on any of my channels or in my Discord, because emulators directly break intellectual property law because they are promoting an unofficial, illegal version of something that is still protected under copyright law. And I, as someone with 25 million words in print and various publications to my name and video games published and etc., I very much defend copyright law and intellectual property law because it's a very important part of protecting my works as a creative, as an author, as a game developer, and so on and so forth. So yeah, headcanon, definitely not fact.